Welcome to Decide With. Our guest today is Kathy Boffman, Principal of Calm Blue. Welcome, and how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Brian?
Doing great, thank you. South by Southwest is next week, and I'm aware that you're being labeled the provocateur of a panel that the Council of Public Relations Firms is putting on social media and marketing. Do you want to talk a little bit about that panel, the event, why it exists, and who's going to be on it?
Sure. The council felt very strongly that they needed a presence at South by Southwest. This is the first time the Council of PR Firms is going to be there. And it's really because social communications is the new normal. And the council's members and their clients are all flocking to South by Southwest to find out what's new and what the cutting edge is. So we really thought about what would be an interesting panel that would appeal broadly to a lot of different people that go to South by Southwest. And our panel is really called Social Budgets Are Growing, but Is It Working? And we've invited three really interesting marketers to be on the panel. One is Julie Ham from PepsiCo. One is Chris Narayanan from Samsung. And the other is David Witt from General Mills. And all three of them have a different story to tell about this topic. We feel that the first part of it, social budgets are growing, is almost a given.
Yep.
It's the second part of it where I'm supposed to be the provocateur and really get to the bottom of, is it working? If so, how is it working? What are we learning from everything, all the social experimentation that's been going on over the last couple of years? What are we learning? And as organizations, how are we integrating that learning across our organizations? We feel that that a lot of organizations are still in the experimental stage, and then there's others like our panel members who are a little bit further along the social maturation stage that can really lend a lot of great insights into this topic. And finally, we want to delve into the ROI of social. Now, there's a lot of organizations out there that say, oh, ROI, we're still not there yet on ROI. We can only really measure portions of this. But I want to delve into that a little bit with the panel and sort of get under the hood and figure out if we feel we can't measure ROI, why? And if we can't measure ROI, how much longer are we going to get away with that? I think that's a really interesting conversation to have.
Well, I don't want to bleed too much, too much of a little peek into the panel, but I'm pretty sure you've done some pre-calls and some walkthroughs with the panelists. Are there any top-line takeaways for our audience, all of whom are in integrated marketing, from PR to IR to advertising to CorpCom? Are there any top-line tips, or let's call them successes, that you've heard from the panels about how they're measuring, engaging their social? And I'm aware you're going to dig deeper into it on the day of the event, but how are they measuring successes, and what have you heard from them so far?
Well, I really need to, as you can guess, I really need to leave that up to them. In our pre-calls, we really talked about the fact that they needed to find really great examples of this for us to go over in the during the panel. But one of the brands did talk about that other than their products being on the store shelves, that they know that word of mouth is the #2 indicator at those products getting off the store shelves.
Great.
And that was one of the ways that they measured. Another one of our panelists really talked about how the C-suite is really viewing the measurement of social, and that they have to get beyond looking at engagement metrics and really look at how are we driving revenue for our organization? How are we really measuring conversions and not just those broad engagement metrics that so many people quote, like number of friends on Facebook, or the number of likes, or the number of page views, things like that. Those are interesting, but they're not particularly useful in and of themselves as a measurement approach for ROI.
Yep. You need to be measuring the outputs, not just the outcomes, I guess. You want to be measuring sales, return, products moving off of shelves versus just engagement.
Yeah, and it really depends on what your business objective is for engagement.
Yep.
I always push back when people say, oh, well, we're measuring engagement. And the big question is, if you're measuring engagement, why? What do you expect that engagement to do for you? And social engagement typically falls into 3 pillars: feedback, advocacy, and support.
Okay.
So feedback is really when you're crowdsourcing, ideas, innovation, marketing effectiveness, when you want to enhance customer experience. Advocacy is true word of mouth around an issue, an idea, a product, or a service. And support is really when you have a peer-to-peer support model where you have one customer helping another customer figure out the best way to use your product or service. And in the support model, you want to measure cost deflection, for example. So I'm going to adopt that model because I want to take money out of the cost of providing support. And I can totally socialize that function. In advocacy, I want to be able to measure things around brand consideration, brand preference, and that's where conversions and sales will come in. Where I'm looking at feedback, I may be looking at decreased time to market for a new product, or getting to market with a higher quality product, or having better marketing effectiveness. So measurement, or ROI, in this space is very closely aligned with your business mission. And if you're just looking at very general metrics, you're not going to get to that ROI.
Great overview. Great. And some good tips in there as well. Do you want to shift gears a little off the panel and talk a little bit about what you are doing in the social space for your clients and for your business as well, with the hopes, I guess the reason I'm asking is for a tip or two for others?
Well, our company, ComBlue, specializes in social engagement strategy and social business strategy. And then we help our organizations, our clients, essentially execute those programs. No surprise here, measure the ROI of those programs. And we feel our default button is set to programs are more successful if you have a customer or a stakeholder advocate base at the core. So we help organizations figure out who the 6 to 8% of their most passionate customer base is. Did that just...
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, that our most passionate customers, their most passionate customers are. And they then model and mentor in programs across the cloud. And some of the big trends that we're seeing there is that organizations are organizing their efforts both in domained or branded online properties as well as off-domain, so across the cloud. So one of the big things, one of the big tricks is how do you recognize and reward behaviors broadly? It's easy to reward behaviors when they're on your online branded domained community, but once they start going out broadly in the cloud, how do you recognize, how do you reward, and how do you leverage? How do you find your highest performers when they may or may not be performing in this nice little neat space that you've developed for them? So those are some of the things that we're seeing. We sponsor an annual study that we do called the State of Online Branded Communities. And the big things that we're seeing is that social is growing up, that more and more brands are taking a more cohesive approach to what I call the new marketing normal, which is basically integrating social throughout, and that they're providing more and deeper ways for their customers to engage. So we're seeing a lot of good things that are happening and a lot of growth that's occurring across the industry.
All right, Kathy, thank you for your time. Thank you for the tips and the insight. We appreciate it, and have a great time at South by Southwest.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.